What is up, gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode on the channel. On today's episode, we'll be looking at the Stoic guide to dealing with conflict in your day-to-day life. And before we get into this, there's a caveat to this entire episode. Conflict is a necessary part of life. It's not something that you should strive to avoid, because it's in moments of conflict that you truly find your capabilities and the capabilities of others. He who's afraid of going into any conflict zone is he who is afraid of testing his limits and the limits of those around him. I've become very accustomed to conflict on a day-to-day basis with those that I love and those that are near and dear to me, because I understand that it's through conflict that we grow, and it's through conflict that we truly achieve a progression in our life. What are these Stoic principles? Well, we'll split this episode into three key categories. We'll look at the principles for conflict resolution, we'll look at the techniques for conflict resolution, and ultimately we'll look at the strategies for conflict resolution. And then I'll look at some Stoic characteristics that one can embody on a day-to-day basis that are aimed at helping you live a not conflict-free life, but a life in which you deal with adversity in a healthy manner for you and those around you. Let's start off by mentioning the Stoic principles towards conflict resolution. And the first key one that any of us should strive to embody is that of self-awareness. When we are self-aware, we are aware of our own personal tics, the things that trigger us that may not serve any specific situation. We must maintain an open-mindedness to any scenario that we overcome, and we must act from a place of emotionlessness, not in the sense of being robotic, but understanding that just because we feel something towards a specific situation, that feeling may not be justified, and that feeling more than likely is not going to be the way towards resolving the conflict. Take a step back, process the inputs, and don't allow yourself to be drawn into areas, into conflicts that you have no intention of being drawn into. Next up is the principle of detachment. Detachment means to be completely detached to the outcome of any specific interaction, whether that's in a personal engagement or whether that's in a business relationship. To remain and to have the ability to remain detached in any specific scenario is extremely powerful. When you're too attached to a specific outcome, you find that your speech becomes tailored in ways that are inauthentic towards driving that outcome. You can tell, and you can just remember that last time that you had a very aggressive salesperson try to sell you on something, and it came from a place of extreme despair or extreme distress. You can sense that on their words, how they speak, the tonality of their voice, that neediness in their approach towards getting you to have the outcome to buy something. It just is so clear and relevant. And this is the power of detachment. It allows you to come from a more centered space, a space that is more calculated, in a way that allows you to bring the best possible version of yourself that doesn't want anything from anyone or a specific engagement. Next up, we have that of empathy. And empathy is extremely important. I believe in this social media world, in this world where we are just so caught up in not only what others are doing, but more importantly, how our role slots into the wider universe, we become extremely center focused. We're only focused on our thoughts, our emotions, our anxieties, our fears. And though it may be important to be in touch with oneself, there could always be too much of a good thing. And the ability to be empathetic allows you to understand a person's perspective. It doesn't mean you must agree with the person's perspective, but you must understand where they are coming from. You must truly put yourself in their shoes and be able to internalize what has led them to making that decision, because it is in that role play that you're able to truly discern, does this person have a point? Is there something that I can learn from this situation? Am I overreacting to something that I should not be overreacting because I lack the empathetic ability to get into the shoes of someone and to understand where they're coming from? And this is where you achieve a resolution that is truly in the benefit of both people involved. And this is one thing that I find so many people that shy away from. They believe that in order for them to come out victorious, that someone else must lose. But you can create a scenario in which both people benefit and both people gain simply by being empathetic and understanding the person in front of you. Next up, we'll move into some Stoic techniques for dealing with conflict. And the first one is going to be that of negative visualization. So you might ask, Shadi, why would I want to visualize negative things happening in my life? I want to live a life that is extremely rosy and nothing wrong can happen in this life. Well, on the contrary, in order to live a good life, you must be prepared for the worst case scenario. And this is what negative visualization allows you to do. It's a mental preparation. It's a mental ability to understand the worst case scenario that can happen and to be prepared for any emotions and any reactions that may arise in the event that this worst case scenario does actually happen. It doesn't mean to dwell on the worst case scenario. It doesn't mean to have an anxiety on the worst case scenario. So many people get this twisted. They believe in order to negatively visualize something, that means that I must live in a state of despair and anxiety. But on the opposite, this allows you to feel what it would be like to actually go through a worst case scenario and to prove to yourself that you'll be fine regardless of the scenario. This is what it means to visualize negativity in your life. It doesn't mean to actually live in despair, to live in this dark bubble. It means to know that regardless of what happens, that you've experienced this before, whether it's in your mind or in reality, and you've been fine, and you can go through it again and again and again with zero pain. Next up is the premeditation of adversity, which is similar to negative visualization. But this is actually taking specific scenarios of adversity that can happen in your day-to-day life and to run yourself through how you actually go about dealing with these scenarios. It's like the pilot that is training to become a pilot. It's like the student pilot that is learning to become a pilot. Before they actually go ahead and ride in the plane and take off into the skies, they simulate that motion thousands of times. They spend hundreds of hours on that flight simulator in order to become accustomed to how to deal with certain bouts of turbulence, a failed landing gear, or any other catastrophes that can happen in the air in order to be prepared for them in the unlikely event. And I mentioned this, in the unlikely event that they do happen in real time. And this is the power of premeditating adversity in your life. You're always going to be prepared for whatever happens. The last technique for dealing with conflict as a Stoic is going to be that of self-reflection. The ability to reflect on one's own actions and on one's own day-to-day experiences is a tremendous ability and a privilege that we as human beings have been given. We're one of the only species that can actually think about our own thoughts and our own actions and to evaluate them, to dissect them, to see where we went right and where we can go wrong. Even if you are the most balanced, the most spiritual, the most religious, the most hardworking, the most disciplined person in the world, you will trip up. Tripping up and being imperfect is an inevitability of life. So take a moment, take a step back, reflect on yourself, whether it's in keeping a journal, whether it's in meditation, whether it's in just simply recalling certain events that they were discussing them with someone. See where you went right and where you went wrong, and where you went wrong, evaluate what was it that led me to react in a way that was out of line with who I wish to be? Did I speak out of line? Did I get triggered by something that I should not have been triggered with? Did I have a neediness to something? Did I want something without a sense of attachment? What led to you being your inauthentic self, and how can you avoid that in the future? This is the power of self-reflection. And the greatest Stoics in history have meditated on their thoughts, their emotions, and their actions in the aim of getting better for themselves and those around them. Last but definitely not least, you might ask yourself, well, Shadi, all is great, but what if I want to avoid conflict? What if there are certain scenarios in which conflict is not necessary? Are there any virtues that I can apply or implement that can help me to prevent unnecessary conflict in my life? Well, there are, and ultimately this is to cultivate your virtues as a person, as a human being in life. Understand that you need to practice the virtues of patience, kindness, and ultimately forgiveness on a day-to-day basis. Patience will give you the ability to withstand any storm, to withstand any hardship. Kindness will allow you to bring a sense of love to those around you, whether you are close to them or you're not close to them. To be kind to others is a gift to yourself rather than a gift to others, because it shows you what you're capable of, even in the starkest of circumstances. And ultimately, that of forgiveness is ultimately the most important gift you can give yourself. That is to live and let live, and ultimately to forgive and to forget, and to move forward with a sense of clarity over who you wish to be and the types of people you wish to avoid. Last but not least is the importance of having a sense of gratitude towards you, the experiences you live, and those around you. At the end of the day, it's important to be thankful for what you have, no matter how big or how small. Be thankful for those around you, no matter how they treat you, no matter how they don't treat you. Understand that the idea and the fact that you're alive today is a blessing in itself, and that aliveness allows you to alter your reality in real time. If you're still living, if you're still breathing, you have the opportunity to change your circumstances. And this is the idea of being grateful. For being grateful for the good things that come your way and even the bad things, because even in bad, you can learn how to overcome, and you can learn to become a better person. You can learn to become more resilient. You can learn to become more attentive. You can learn to become smarter, to become sharper, to become wiser. And this is the power of gratitude.